Hi, I'm Rebecca Bradley. This is the Virtual Crime Book Club. It is Monday, the 7th of April, 2025. Today we are discussing Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. No, I'm hoping I'm not butchered Amy's name. If you are watching this as a recording and aren't present at this meeting, be aware that it's going to have full spoilers in this discussion. So if you are currently reading the book or want to read the book, you might want to wait to read it or finish it before continuing with this video. So has everybody finished the book?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. So, did you enjoy Listen for the Lie?
Mm,
Yes, no?
I
Yeah,
did.
on the whole, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just does somebody want to say what they enjoyed about this book?
I'll say, um, I I thought she was a funny character. I thought she had a sense of humor, and I kind of pictured, you know, she was kind of like fast talk. She was quick-witted, which I liked. I thought the podcast was an interesting storyline. It wasn't like the best book ever, to be honest. I thought there was too many characters. I got a little bit lost with some of them. I was overwhelmed. I think there was just too many. I had to keep going back to say who was that to try to connect the names. But it was an enjoyable read. It was definitely was wanted to finish it and see what was going to see if she did it.
Yes. I think what was the main character's name? Lucy. I think Lucy was a very snarky character. She always had something to say in her head about the discussion she was currently having. What did people think of her inner voice?
Well, first I thought it was her, but then I realized it was her, the friend that was killed. It wasn't her. So that was interesting to me. Uh, but that took a while. Like they didn't. That was a gradual realization. But interesting.
Yeah. Um, what did anybody else enjoy the book? What did they like? Thank you, Laura,
Welcome.
for jumping straight in on your first meeting.
It's okay.
I really liked it because I thought it was just very engaging in the sense that it wasn't maybe, yeah, like Lars, like the best book, but I thought it was very enjoyable. It was an easy read. It was a page turner. Um, I definitely right till the very end did not know who or like what had happened. So that was a very fun surprise for me.
Mm, yes, it was one of those because, as Laura said, there were a lot of characters, but it made it so that you really had no idea um, where it was going to go. Um, so did anybody not get on with the book?
To say I did like it. I could say why I didn't like it because there was some of that, but I did like it because of all the reasons people have just said. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, yes.
Good. It was a page turner and it was easy to read. And I liked the fact that there were, nobody was all good. I like the fact that her parents weren't, wonderful parents and all that sort of thing, which made it a bit different. What I found difficult again with people have said this already. There were a bit too many characters who were perhaps not fleshed out enough, so it was difficult to remember who they were, and they all seemed to be sleeping with each other, which got very confusing. You know,
Holly had a good time. So, um, Very helpfully. I always listen to the audiobook because I can get through it faster. Muriel and Vera both sent me. There were questions in the back of the book. So I'm not stumped for questions this week. I haven't had to work hard today. Um, so talking of characters, Grandma Beverly was a lot of readers say that she was the favourite, and she was one of my favourites. Though I really liked Lucy because of the snarkiness, not just the voice of Savvy, but her own snarkiness and the way she embraced what everybody thought of her. But her grandma Beverly, she really had. I think she was a particularly fleshed out character. What what did people think of her?
I mean, I've seen those questions in the book as well because I've got the book. I enjoyed this book, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was really strong on characterization. I mean, I think, like other people have said, I just liked it because it was quite a good whodunit. You thought it was one person, then the next. So yeah, I think the grandmother was more fleshed out, but to me, she was still a bit of a stereotype. The kind of grandmother. The only person that Lucy really loved, and the kind of forward-thinking grandmother for her age. So I don't think I had any particular favourite characters. I just like the plotting of the whodunit, really.
Yeah, yeah.
She was outrageous, wasn't she, really, as a grandmother. She's not really what you would expect from somebody in their sort of third generation. The whole setting up of Lucy and Ben, to fix it so that they met each other and that kind of thing. She just kept saying things that you just wouldn't expect a grandmother to say, and I think she was all the more likable for that.
Yes, yeah.
I liked her. I wish I was her when I'm like 80. So yeah. No, because she was fun. The book has a sense of humor. Sorry I joined late because I'm not at home.
It's good
So
to
I'll stay half an hour only because I'm so I enjoyed the book because it was like a page turner and it was funny, and I like this dark humor thing. So for me it was more the dark humor that appealed. And yeah, I understand that Beverly is a great character just because she was funny and she dressed very with bright colors, and she had all these men coming into her trailer, so she was like this kind of fun grandmother.
Yes, I also want to still be that confident when I'm 80. We can all aspire to that, can't we?
I've got a 94-year-old mother can throw. She outdoes Beverly, so
Really brilliant.
yeah, it's quite a force. So I kind of enjoyed that character and the relationship with the granddaughter. It's like kind of relatable. So it was fun. I enjoyed her. She was it's almost in my view kind of realistic somehow because they were generations. I mean, they were children of maybe the 60s, having a good time in the 60s, and some of them, they don't have to stop. They've been through they can have a good time. So I don't know. I see people like that.
Yes.
I liked her too. I think she had a great sense of humor, and she had a big heart. And it was sometimes interesting how what she told her daughter. She was so different from her own daughter. So I really liked her. She was honest as well, wasn't she?
Yes, very honest. What do we think about the fact that as a younger generation to Beverly, the younger generations always seem to expect the generation above to be quieter, more subdued, and not capable of living a life that the generation that are thinking of those above are living. Do you think we're all, as a society, guilty of expecting when you get older that you have to quiet down and subdue yourself?
Absolutely. I see it with my granddaughter who is now 14, and is convinced that she and her generation have invented dating, have invented, all of that stuff. She doesn't want to believe that when my husband and I were at uni, we didn't exactly sit at home every night,
Been there, done that.
Yes. I know it's such a bizarre societal activity where we age those above us faster, and yet we don't want to get there ourselves and don't think we will change into that. Um, yeah, I do think it's real, and I think that's why she may have been such a surprise to readers, because we do, even as we're all, none of us are really, really young. Sorry, Divya, you look, and Vera.
What about me?
Shut my mouth now before I insult anybody else. But yeah, I think that's why she stands out. Did anybody have any other favourite characters? Swapping away from Grandma.
I liked Ben. Without him, we would have Lucy would have been left behind or never gone back there. I did like the podcast, the way he kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I really did that. And what one of the other people said about everyone was sleeping with everyone, I found that mildly amusing, but also frustrating. I was like, for God's sakes, who's not been with who in this town? But yeah, I quite like Ben.
Yes, he came across very well.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I would. I get a lot of, because I do the audiobook, I get a lot of the emotion from the narrator as well. So I kind of feel him differently to what I might have if I read him. So it's nice to know that it came across so well if you're reading him as well. So we've mentioned that Savvy was Lucy's best friend who died some years previously, and she's gone back to town for this podcast and her grandma's birthday. And we find out that Savvy's not the angel the whole town thinks she is, and that she wanted to kill Lucy's husband. And we start getting into some quite dark subject areas, don't we, with this? And the reason she wanted to kill him. Do you think she was justified wanting to help her friend kill Matt?
Killing is a bit of a, it's something that you can't just go into have just lightly because you want to do something. Is you're apart from yourself obviously going down the wrong road, and the society not agreeing and you breaking all sorts of laws. There's a lot of people around you who get touched by it, and they suffer too, even if they're not directly involved. So
which we can see by Savvy's death.
Yeah.
Did it make...
And it will probably be difficult to get away with it because I guess his wife will be always a suspect, and especially if they knew that she was being subject to violence. So yeah, so it was a bit dramatic the way they try to address the issue, because okay, Lucy could just leave her husband or try to leave her husband, move to a different place. I don't know.
I also felt that I mean, you asked like fair to kill him. It isn't. I would feel more justice if everyone found out the truth. So when his second wife kind of gave that bit on the podcast and stuff, I felt a lot more vindication, and it just felt more satisfying than if he were to just disappear or die.
Because as a sorry.
I guess she couldn't tell the truth because if she did fight back, she was saying she fought back, that she'll become the bad one again. And if she told the truth about her friend, it would be, everybody was remembering Savvy as a good person. So it was complicated. So, but still, the murder wasn't the right solution, but it was complicated. That was kind of interesting the way that was written. That
But-
was the hardest.
I wasn't quite sure if she really wanted to do it in the end. I thought she wanted to provoke her friend Lucy to leave her husband, to do something. And I think she knew that Lucy wouldn't be able to do it, but she tried to push her so that she would leave her husband, who wasn't doing any good to her.
Yes, yeah. Craig, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that was some of the book I found not quite believable, which was like, let's kill your husband sort of stuff. And also then we found out that Safi had killed someone previously and, seemed to have just got away with it. And that was never explored, or we didn't delve into that much. It just got mentioned a few times and brushed to the side, I felt. And that's elements of the book I did find confusing, which was, as others have said, there's many characters. I struggled to follow it sometimes, but that element, I mean, there was enough in this book without throwing in another, oh, she killed before and all that, although, we didn't need that. I didn't think anyway.
I agree. I don't think we needed that either. And when it was first suggested, I did, even because they hadn't found that guy's body, I did have a quick think about whether he was actually going to wasn't dead and was going to come back in the story and he was the murderer. But yeah, overall, I don't think that was really needed. It didn't make much difference to the story.
I also felt that it was like unnecessary. I didn't love that bit, but if anything, it just it did make me feel like Savvy's suggestion to kill was real. Like she'd done it once, so I took her suggestion seriously. Like if not for that, I would have thought Savvy's just kind of like riling Lucy up.
Yeah, I thought it was to flesh up a bit the character of Savvy rather than actually going into more.
So, do you think the contrast the book shows, where all the characters are saying how wonderful she is this something that happens with murder victims when in reality we know she's already killed and she wanted to kill again? There's this massive contradiction of who a murder victim is and who they were when they were alive.
That's a difficult one, isn't it? People never want to speak ill of the dead. And, often in real cases where someone's been murdered, or they're always portrayed as this person who was happy go lucky, smiley, or there's certain words used if they were challenging, say, so it's a difficult one.
Yeah. Sally, did you want to say something?
I agree with what just been said, and also the person that's murdered, the murderer is always typically portrayed as all bad as well. You don't ever hear, oh yeah, this person's been convicted of murder, but actually, before that they were a good father and a good pet child, and it's sort of, we like to put people in good, they're either good or they're bad. But going back to, I want to say something on a previous point about this idea, the voice in Lucy's head about killing Matt. It was interesting because that got extended. She seemed to want to kill lots of people. It was quite disturbing, really, because the voice in her head was telling, oh, kill all sorts of people. She was really getting quite, you wondered if there was some sort of mental imbalance there. She said, oh no, I could kill this person or that person or the other person.
I think there was definitely a mental imbalance because she said all that to her psychiatrist.
Do we think that was explained away by the head trauma, though?
And also the trauma of her best friend being murdered and
yeah.
her not being able to remember. Sorry, it's a bit noisy.
I think it's more about that.
Yeah. But I think the book was it's done in a very clever way because all the characters change along the book. Because at least me, I start thinking, oh, this is a good guy or a good girl, and then suddenly we see another side of this character. So not only Savi, but even like Nina and her ex-husband Matt and Colin. So I start thinking, okay, they are bad, they are good, they are whatever, and then I kept changing my mind because certain things came to light. So I think it was good to have some surprises about the characters.
Yeah,
they were all really messed up.
Sorry,
they were all really messed up. It was kind of fun. A little drama.
But like Sally says, we like to put people into boxes, don't we? We like everything neat and tidy. But going back to what Divya said earlier about Matt, talking about Savi and her being good or bad, Divya said that if Matt would have been murdered, he would have been seen as good, whereas if they'd have outed him for the violence, then you've got everybody looking at him and seeing who the real person is. And I think that is something the book showed really quite well, is that people like to put other people into categories, don't they? Talking of Savvy, I am following this list because I didn't write one of my own today. Do you think Lucy should have given up her friend's secret after she'd been murdered to maybe help herself?
I didn't think there was any specific to. I mean, she did hire the PI, and I feel like nobody might have believed her. I mean, one of the reasons she never spoke out about Matt was that no one would believe her. And given the way things were unfolding and she couldn't remember things, I don't see how it would have been an appealing option, apart from wanting to protect her best friend.
No, you're right. She couldn't find the guy, could she? So it would have just sounded like she was throwing mud at a wall to save herself. Yeah. Yeah.
At one point, I wasn't even sure if Savi was telling the truth or if Savi just made up that story. Because I think she wanted Lucy to feel that she would support Lucy in whatever. So she said, okay, let's kill your husband because you need to leave this toxic relationship, because she knew that Lucy wasn't strong enough to leave the relationship. And then she said, no, because I already killed this guy. So at one point I thought maybe she's just making this story up. Maybe she had, I don't know, there was something, a fight with the guy that tried to attack her or something. And then she just made up this story. So I wasn't sure if everything was true at the end.
Yes, because she did like this wild child kind of attitude when she was alive, didn't she? So she could have thought that it was something brilliantly shocking just to say to a friend. Yeah, that's a good point.
But I thought that too, Vera. That in the beginning, I thought maybe she had made it up, but when Lucy found out through that PI that he had existed, I thought that's a proof that she really did that.
Yes.
The sister also corroborated it, didn't she? Because she went to meet the sister, Savi's sister, and she knew about that she'd killed somebody.
Yeah, so it wasn't something she'd just told Lucy. Talking about putting people in boxes, if the podcast hadn't have been running, do you think people would have changed their minds about Lucy and Savi, as in who each of them were?
Could you repeat the question, please? I didn't get the beginning.
Do you think that if it hadn't have been for the podcast and different versions of events coming out, do you think the community and the people and friends that knew them would have changed their minds about Lucy's role or Savi's perfect life that had built up around her death.
I don't
No,
think so.
I
I
don't
mean,
think so too.
they didn't do anything until the podcast came out, so I don't think they would have changed.
Why should they? I mean, they had made up their mind. They had this double face. Savvy's good and Lucy's bad, and so they had their solution.
And the fact that the ex-husband Matt was so convinced that she was, and the fact he was so afraid of her badly on the night, and they decided to split. I mean, everything was pointing towards her being Lucy being guilty. So I don't think people would have changed their mind.
Including her parents.
One of
Even after the podcast, a lot of people didn't change their mind.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Still of the same mind in spite of the podcast, or they have to have it, actually really pointed out to them and help them believe
But
it.
the podcast provoked it. The podcast pushed people. The podcast got people talking, and it was only when they were sort of examining themselves and looking into who hadn't lied, who had lied, that it started to come out, and the truth, emerged. And so I do believe that the podcast had a lot to do with that by the publication of the pushing.
And people who run podcasts and things like that are called influencers for a reason. And it was interesting from my perspective of watching how Ben was influencing people with the content that he was producing.
Yes, because
Ben wasn't all good. Ben was a bit of a mix. I liked him as a character, but he wasn't, sort of all good either. There were sort of things about the ethics of, sleeping with somebody that you're working with, and he sort of threw a lie in at the end, didn't he? He sort of said something off his own bat, which he knew wasn't true. So
yes, he did. So yeah, I think the characters, the main ones that we know of, were had I know people at the beginning of the discussion said that not all characters were fleshed out, but the ones that were, they had two sides to them. So I don't tend to listen to true crime podcasts, having been in true crime myself. So do they actually solve old crimes?
I've only fully listened to Serial. It's a pretty popular one, and I think that it did make a difference because similar to Ben's, I think I wouldn't say it solved something, but it caused people to look at alternative ideas of who the killer was. And I feel like that's exactly what Ben's podcast did, right? Throughout, it caused people to kind of like Craig said, question and think about other people. And I think there was some point where they were like, based on the podcast, they're pointing to as if you were the murderer or Matt was the murderer. And it was just making people question things. And I actually really loved this book, but the least satisfying thing about it was the fact that even after everything, there were still people who didn't believe that Lucy was innocent. And just like as someone who kind of likes a happy ending, that bugged me because Reddit actually got that email that said that had an article. And I actually thought when she saw the article from the journalist, it was going to be someone saying, I'm so glad you're innocent. Can I do a profile on you? And she would be like, no, I don't want to tell my story. But it turns out the journalist was still calling her a liar. And I was like, oh, this is very frustrating. I thought we settled that.
Yes. Yeah, it did go to show the way that people are very tunnel visioned when they've got a few facts and then they bend it to fit their own narrative. So there were a lot of characters, and it was a whodunit. How did you fare on getting to the right person?
I didn't.
Not a clue.
Only towards the end, really, really close to the end, when she started describing that she was kissing someone, and so then I started suspecting him, but towards the end.
Well, I had forgotten about him, from from the last time he was there, and then he just completely disappeared from my brain until he reappeared much further down in the story. But even there, didn't occur to me.
Yeah, it occurred to me the same, when she was describing kissing somebody near the dumpsters at the wedding. I thought, oh, it sounds like it might be him. And then it kind of continued that he could perhaps be the killer. But I didn't really know why. I couldn't really think why it would be him.
She kept Emmett out of it for a long time. She didn't give us much about him. So I was always thinking it was Matt. And for a long time, I thought it was Matt. And then so whatever device she used to keep Emmett out of it kind of worked.
So, which character was everybody leaning towards having killed Savvy?
I too also thought it was Matt. But I was going to add that. So I'd read this book before and I recommended it to my sister-in-law, and she said, yeah, it was great, but she didn't like that there were not enough clues to know that it was Emmett at the end. And I was like, oh, interesting. So I read it again for tonight's discussion, and this time I tried to keep like an extra keen eye out whether there were clues at all. And I realized that there really weren't. I can kind of see both sides of it, where some people may be a bit frustrated because they like putting the pieces together. On the other hand, I was just kind of like enjoyed the complete surprise. But at the same time, he wasn't like, it was still nice because he wasn't a new character. Like, it wasn't like something totally new came in and you're like, hey, that just added
That's unfair.
benefits, Yeah, exactly. So he was there from very early on. He never really disappeared, but there was no hint that it was him. And I think that even though I couldn't guess it was him, it really tied into the theme of people not being what they seem. So that also added to make it kind of gel, because we saw that with Lucy, we saw that with Savvy, that she wasn't what people were saying. We saw that with Matt, we saw that with Lucy's mom. I did not see that coming with her and Savvy's old boyfriend. And so it was a surprise, but not a surprise that, hey, people are not what they seem.
I haven't ruled out Lucy completely. I thought it might be a quirky ending that she actually did it.
Me too.
I was trying to think how the author would write it, bearing in mind that it was from Lucy's point of view, and she had this really sarcastic inner voice as well as Savvy's voice. She had this sarcasm about her, and I thought, how do you get a sarcastic, quite likable character to, I liked the sarcasm, to turn around and actually be the killer. So yeah, I did wonder if it was her and how she would do it.
I was glad it wasn't. I liked her. I didn't want it to be her.
No.
And I'm glad that her and Ben have a thing going. I think that's kind of like that. A little bit of a romantic,
Yeah.
because he's a good guy. He was a troublemaker, but he was good at heart.
He's a sexy guy, so yeah, it's good,
Why not?
good for Lucy.
And he lives in LA. Works out well.
It will, only 10-15 minutes down the road. Why are people so fascinated by true crime podcasts?
I don't know. I don't understand it myself.
I don't know, but we are all fascinated by crime. We don't need crime.
Yeah.
But it's usually fiction.
Yeah, fiction. I can understand, it's escapism, because you're pretending to be a detective and all intelligent, and you can get all the things. But true crime is, somebody, it could be a neighbor, it could be somebody not far from you, and being killed, and it's attracting attention, and people just, there's some magazines and podcasts and everything, and TV programs, lots of things about that. I don't understand it.
I know, and there are so many people attached to both the victim who are affected and also the killer. Their friends and family are affected. Margot, when I asked this question, you looked like you wanted to say something. No? No. So the only other thing is,
Sorry, Rebecca, on that, it's not just true crime podcasts. So I work closely with media, and even with newspapers, the top articles are almost always crime and courts. Like there was once an editor said to me that if we wanted only top articles, unfortunately, they would just be crime articles, like they do the best. So I think it's a common theme beyond podcasts.
Well, it's marketing. Is I think we kind of been directed towards what is easier to find out about and then to sell and get people addicted to it.
People
Somehow.
really are fascinated. Podcasts that I hear about in any sense are usually the serial and then a couple that followed serial afterwards. But then we are reading crime fiction. We have a love of reading about in this genre, even though it's fiction. So there is something about it that draws us in the mess of people's lives. Anybody got any ideas on why we have this thing for such?
Well,
I think it's a question of what is man? What how do we function? What are our motivations to do things in life? And I quite like the stories where normal people come into a situation where they commit a crime. I think those stories are more interesting for me than just crazy people who psychopaths who have a problem and then they start killing people. But I think it's one thing is that you also want to find out if you find the clues in the story, that is one thing. But I also think it's learning about how people work, what are their motivations and ideas, why do they do things.
I think that's a great point about learning. We want to understand ourselves and the other people that surround us in our lives and in the areas that we live. Because on the whole planet, we are the most complex creatures that there are. So I think that's a great point. It's about wanting to understand.
And maybe we want to find out who we can trust. If we learn from these stories and we look behind the facade, and as in this story, people are not what they seem to be. And maybe we want to get clues about who we can trust.
Yeah, it's a good point that. So were you satisfied? Did you believe the ending of the book? Did it satisfy you? Did it wrap everything up that had been happening? Because there were a lot of characters.
I accepted it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
I only
was happy.
lack of a happy ending with that journalist article. Apart from that, I was okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's funny how Lucy suddenly was all right with people still being awful to her. It just sort of, yeah. I mean, I suppose it was, but I mean, it was a sort of happy ending, but not a happy ending. Yeah, I thought she would have still been more upset with people being awful to her.
Bless me, sorry. Yeah, I suppose it gives you an insight into people in the public eye. No matter what comes out about them, somebody is always going to have an opinion that isn't true. So,
but I think the most important thing was that she was sure that she didn't do it.
Yes.
And she didn't mind so much the opinions of the other people, if she did it, if she had done it or not. And I think she was so relieved that she didn't do it.
Yes.
I agree. And I think she also understood better her parents' attitude towards her. So I think this was also important to her because she understood why the parents believed she was the killer. I think that helped a bit.
Did she though? I feel like she didn't understand. I mean, she did, but why did they believe Matt
Yeah,
her? I
Oh,
feel like
yeah, yeah.
it was a
horrified
bit, but at least she understood that
that she had more pieces
they
of information.
yeah, she understood why they thought it was her. She was just, but yeah, how did you believe that I could do that to my friend? But at the same time, she also believed that she could actually have done something to her friend. So at the end,
But it was a total rift with her parents. She was never going to go back to her parents, she implied, although she might have understood it. You know, she was going away, and it sounded like she was never going to go back and see her parents. She'd see her grandmother,
But she was in that place anyway, wasn't she? She'd gone back to her hometown and had refused point blank to go back to her parents' house.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I did. I mean that was very strange. That they'd not even spoken to her about what Matt had said to them. Um, so yeah, that was a strange one.
Well, maybe they reacted a lot to Matt's fear because his fear was real.
Mm.
From what she was saying, he was really, really scared of her. So that may have had a big impact on their opinion.
Yeah.
And it was said in the book that men believe men. And I can say that in my family, when I got married, my parents always asked my husband about financial matters, and he was the most important person. And that was interesting too. So
Yeah.
they never thought that I would be able to do that.
Mm.
They thought, oh, it's a man, he knows all these things. And maybe they thought something like that too. He had seen it, and he was so upset about it. So why should they
Not
doubt him?
believe him.
And she had no proof, and they didn't know if she was lying or not when she said, I can't remember.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, how well do you really know your kids as adults? Like, they have lives. Like, you don't stuff my mother will never know about me and stuff. I'm imagining adult children. So the self-doubt and Matt's, charisma, and everyone loved Matt, and they had self-doubt, and there was so much pointing toward her. She just, maybe you just don't ever know. They couldn't 100% be behind her. Although I don't know. Like, I think people have secrets, even your kids. So.
And she never spoke to her parents about his behavior. There was not such a close relationship, so they didn't know what was going on in their marriage.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they said that she had changed during the marriage, that she became more aggressive, and so probably they thought she was mad.
Yes. So before I ask if the next question to round it off, is there anything else that you want to say about this book? Because it's provoked quite a lot of conversation, actually.
What I really liked was it was so funny sometimes. The way she expressed things, I had to laugh out loud sometimes. I really liked her sarcasm and her humor and irony, and I thought that was really good. I like that.
I think it blended. The author did a very good job of bringing the difficult subjects like domestic violence, and how men relate to each other outside of women within such a kind of light-hearted crime, not a completely serious crime novel. these subject matters were still layered in within it. Do you think that worked? The
I think it
darkness,
did.
the light.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I
It
think
did.
that someone mentioned about each character being both good and bad at the same time. I guess even with the parents, like frustrating that they wouldn't believe their own daughter, but at the end of the day, they thought she was a murderer, but still wanted to protect her. So there's that lopsided, they cared, but yeah, just I think that blend is seen there as well.
Yes. So she did a very good job of the characters that were fleshed out, did have more than one version of themselves. Yeah, yeah. So would you go and buy, and because this was debut month, I think Amy was the author who it's a debut adult novel. I think she's written YA. Would you read another book, an adult book by this author?
Yeah.
I did wonder
Yeah, I
whether
think
there'd be
so.
a series, actually, whether there'd be another one where he does a podcast of the true crime.
Yeah, or them two somehow together
Possibly, yeah.
working a podcast. Yeah.
Don't forget Paige.
Pardon?
Paige, his assistant. There'd be three of them working
Yes.
together.
She didn't really come onto the page. Paige didn't come onto the page very much,
No,
though, did she? So she was one of those characters that I really didn't know who she was. Yeah.
I really wanted her to get into it a bit more and more in contact with Lucy, but it just stopped suddenly.
She didn't
Yeah.
approve of their relationship, did she? So then that's it.
Yeah, well,
Character was gone.
it didn't have to stop the relationship she had with Lucy. I mean, relationship.
No, but it did, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she thought he was unprofessional.
Well, he wasn't unprofessional.
Yeah. 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 Is there any questions that you think I've missed out? I have used as many as I can on this sheet.
I have a question for everyone. I'm just curious, do you guys find it annoying or unhelpful if there are no hints throughout the book to figure out who did it in a whodunit? Like, is that something that's very important to you to have hints, or is having no hints equally as wonderful a surprise?
I'd rather hints.
Yeah.
It depends on how the story is told for me.
A
In this
mixture.
case,
I think you'd like to be the detective yourself sometimes, and to be pleased with yourself if you spot a clue and you end up being right. So it's always nice having that. Alternatively, sometimes when you have no clues at all, it can be just
be
as
fun.
enjoyable to
You
sit
don't
back
want
and
it
just
too
watch it unfold
easy.
in front of you.
Yeah, you don't want it too easy, but you want a little something. You want it completely hidden to, like, I thought Emmett was a little too hidden. I wanted a little something, like not
I like hints. I like to solve the
not too
puzzle.
easy, but something.
Yeah.
We even if I'm wrong, but
I usually am.
I thought even if there was no hint, the story was so enjoyable for me. I just read it in one go. I couldn't let go of the book, so I didn't mind not having the hints.
Do we not think the fact that he's always had a crush on Lucy was a hint at all?
Yeah.
Not
Not
enough to
enough of
continue
one.
the until the end.
Well,
Not
I
enough of
thought.
one for killing somebody that's not Lucy. Yeah.
Well, at some point, I thought they might go back together, or she wanted, but then something else happened. I think he was with Nina. That's why. That's when it. Oh, not
Someone said
possible.
this to me once. It was that my take is readers are so smart nowadays. They want to both figure out the mystery for themselves, but still be surprised at the ending, which sometimes is just impossible.
It is an impossible task. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So anything else?
No.
Right, thank you very much. I will just log this recording off.